expense training. This training will be provided through the Deltek system that has been vetted by the owners and the senior management team in helping Allegheny adopt a more compliance-oriented organization where we fit with the regulations of the DCAA and other federal agencies. To do this, we've had to modify our policies and procedures as it relates to travel in order to comply with Deltek and those regulations. Deltek is very intense in terms of the compliance that it makes sure that we have. The goal here is to get an approved accounting system for the organization. This will allow us to get more work, have larger contracts, as well as having lower rates so that we are more competitive. Again, this has been approved by the executive team, and we are moving forward with implementation of multiple modules of Deltek, including time, expense, budgeting and planning, and purchasing. The policies that we've adopted that you can find on SharePoint under the travel policy section have been vetted by our mentor protege partner that is similar in size to Allegheny, and also they have ran Deltek for multiple years. Another advantage to using the Deltek system is there is no credit card reconciliation that will have to be done if your travel card is used for travel only, because all of that can be reconciled in the Deltek system. Also on SharePoint, you'll find the handout. You'll find the handout with the screenshots and instructions on the expense authorizations and expense reports that you will have to submit for your travel. The goal of the expense authorization is that this should be completed at least 5 days before your departure date, but it should be entered as soon as possible once you know about travel requirements by your supervisor or the customer. Trips in excess of 100 miles one way or 1 day in duration and or $100 of estimated expenses will need to go through this authorization and report step on Deltek. The link that you see on your screen will have the login ID, which is your employee number, and a password that you have set up, and the domain will always be Allegheny ST in all capital letters. Once you log in, you will see an expense tab at the top of your screen. To start your expense authorization, we will click Plan Expenses and Expense Authorization, and we'll hit Create for New. At this point, you'll have an authorization date, which is what day you're completing this. The employee name is automatically filled in, and it'll be a travel expense report under authorization type. What you'll want to do is you'll want to put a short description that will help you easily identify the trip and the dates of travel. Again, you want this to at least be 5 days in advance so your supervisor can have time to approve it, as well as accounting an opportunity to know what expenses could be coming forward in the near future so we can plan for cash flow purposes. You want to put in a purpose for the authorization and hit Continue. At this point, you want to select the location. This is how your per diem rates will be set. If there's a previous location that you've set up, you can find it by this drop-down list. If not, you can hit New Location. At this point, you can find the states and the respective cities. And you can click this box as a frequent location, and it'll be saved in that initial drop-down list on the previous page. If you click View Rates, you can see the per diem rates for this area. So for Tampa, Florida, the lodging rate's $116, and then the meals and incidentals are broken down for a total of $51 a day. Hit Save. Our location is shown up and the dates that we'll be traveling. Hit Continue. At this point, you want to look at your charge tree. Always click the word Execute, and these will be the travel type codes that you have available under your name, and you'll pick the applicable code for your trip and hit Add to the expense authorization and Create. At this point, you'll want to go through and add the expenses that you're planning to incur on the trip. and click Save after each one. The per diem is automatically calculated based on the dates and the location that you have here. There will be 75% for the first and the last day of travel. So for this particular trip, $178.50. The lodging rate also will auto-calculate based on the per diem rates for Tampa, Florida. All right, so we have some multiple expenses here that we'll be turning into our supervisor for them to approve. Down below, you can look at supporting schedules, and this shows you the account code that your trip will be being charged to, whether it's a corporate code or your contract, and a list of the estimated expenses. Under workflow status, this is where you can see what is the responsibility of the employee. At this point, it's to create and submit. There's a check mark by create. That has been done, and next step for the employee is to submit. When you click submit on the expense authorization, a request comes up to say if the employee would require an advance. Certainly the company doesn't want you to go through any hardships financially due to traveling for us, so if you need an advance to fund that travel ahead of time, we can accommodate that. At this point, if you wanted to do that, you would click yes, put in the advance amount. Obviously, if your trip's a $1,000 trip and you ask for a $5,000 advance, that won't be granted. But up to 100% of what your estimated authorization is eligible for the advance. Enter your password, and you'll see on the top right-hand corner that the status goes from draft to submitted. So at this point, it'll be the responsibility of your supervisor to go in and approve. At this point, the supervisor, again, can see the background of your trip, the initial information you entered, the planned expenses that you have on the trip, as well as the supporting schedules if you required an advance, and how you're charging your trip. And then the workflow status at this point becomes it's the primary supervisor's responsibility to approve, thumbs up or thumbs down. The Deltek system will automatically send an email to your Allegheny email account notifying you that your expense authorization has been approved. At that point, when you come back from your trip, within 10 days of returning from the travel, we would like for you to go in and enter your expense report under Record Expenses. And you'll be creating a new expense report. Automatically pulls down your name, stays as a travel type expense report, but under authorization shows you the outstanding authorizations that you have that has already been approved. So you cannot do an expense report until your authorization has been approved by your supervisor. Once you click on that authorization, some of the information auto-populates from what was already approved, such as the dates of travel and the purpose. Your per diem area already comes in. The charge code is G&A travel as it was approved by the supervisor. Once you hit create at this point, you'll be putting in the claimed expenses, the actual expenses that you had for the trip. Under meals, the per diem will not change from what was auto-calculated on the authorization. But what you want to do is at this point you need to select what meals you had on the trip. If you were at a conference, for example, and lunch was provided, you would deselect lunches for the days that it was provided that you did not have any out-of-pocket expenses. and you hit recalculate. And in this example, you'd get $154.50. If the lunches would have still been there, obviously the per diem is more because you had that out-of-pocket expense. We'll hit continue and save. At this point, we'll add our airfare. Here you have an option for employee paid or company paid. If a member of the finance and accounting team had booked your travel on the corporate credit card, or if you had a personal travel card issued by Allegheny, you would put company paid if that charge was on your credit card. Obviously that amount would not be reimbursed to you. So as you can see in this example, the total here includes the amount of money that the company paid, but it subtracts it out under the company paid row so that the due employee is only the per diem amount at this point. So at this point, if you stayed at the Holiday Inn for $500, on this screen what will happen is the expense incurred is $500, but the per diem was $348. So what we'll have to do is break down the room rate between the rate and the tax rate, and then the per diem will recalculate based on the taxes. We'll hit recalculate. You can see the per diem goes up to $464. At this point, $36 of that is unallowable, and that will be tracked much more heavily going forward than it was in the past by supervisors and senior management team. We'll hit continue, and you will have to provide an explanation for oversealing. And hit save. Again, for the rental car, you have the option for employee paid or company paid. On the travel cards that are issued to individuals from Allegheny, there are multiple items that can be put on those cards, such as airfare, lodging, and rental car, meals, fuel, other type of entertainment expenses will not be eligible to be put on those cards and are restricted by merchant code. All right, so at this point we're going to turn in an expense report, total of $1,178.50 to your supervisor, but $500 of that was company paid, $100 for the rental car, $400 for the airfare. So the employee will receive reimbursement of the lodging expense and the meals. Going forward, we will be depositing expense reports directly into a bank account, the same account that's on file for payroll, versus waiting for a check to be mailed, and then you have to find time to go to the bank. So this will be much more convenient on behalf of the employees. Again, just like on the expense authorization under the supporting schedules, we can look at the charge distribution, what is under ceiling, what's going to be unallowable, and then what's expressly unallowable, such as alcohol on the plane, that you have to subtract out as personal charges. Under workflow status, again, you see the responsibility of the employee is to submit and create. When you submit the expense report, at this point it will ask you for receipts. The receipts requirements is detailed in the travel policy that is also on SharePoint. So at this point you want to click what receipts you have or which ones you are missing. If you are missing a receipt, an explanation will be required and will be reviewed by your supervisor upon submission as to why you do not have that receipt. Once you detail what receipts that you have, an option comes up for a receipt traveler. This is completely optional. This is a good way to help track the expenses and the receipts for your trip. And it just details the general information regarding the report, what type of expense items that you had, how it was paid, the amount incurred, and if a receipt was required. For per diem and mileage, a receipt is never required, but for airfare, lodging, and rental car, those receipts are required, and other charges, please see the travel policy. If you scroll all the way down, you can see that under a expense report task, it's now the responsibility of the employee to attach a single PDF file to the expense report with all the receipts uploaded into one file. So if you click Attach, put in the descriptions for the receipts, and find that single PDF file that has been scanned to your computer, and click Submit. At this point, the status changes to under review. An email has been sent to your supervisor letting them know that you have submitted an expense report. It is now their responsibility as the primary supervisor to approve, as well as finance and accounting will get an email that the primary administrator will need to look at the receipts, ensure that all the applicable ones are contained in that single PDF file, and we'll approve that as well. If you want to see the receipts that you uploaded, you can click the camera for the view button. If you uploaded the wrong file, you can click the trash can to discard the receipts that you uploaded, and then you will get that paper clip again to upload the receipts. So it will now be the responsibility of your supervisor to go in and approve your expense report. With the thumbs up, thumbs down, and then accounting as well with the record button. And now the status on your report has been approved by both finance and accounting and your primary supervisor. The status shows as approved, and that email will be sent to you as well. The goal, as outlined in the travel policy, is that you will be reimbursed within 1 week of your expense report being fully approved by both the primary supervisor and finance and accounting into your bank account, the same account again that is on file for your payroll. If you have any questions with the expense training, please contact Amanda Kobasher or Brandon Lesher with Finance and Accounting. And I look forward to working with you, and welcome to the Allegheny team.